Om Badram Karnebihi Shruniyama Devaha Badram Pashyema Akshabihi Ryajatraha Sthirairangair Tushtuvam Sastanubihi Vyashema Devahitan Yadayuhu Swastinaha Indro Vridrashravaha Swastinaha Pusha Vishwavedaha Swastinaha Tarksho Arishtanemihi Swastino Bruhaspatir Dadatu Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi यो अन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाच इमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयति अखिलशक्तिधरस्वदाम्ना अन्यांष्टहस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथाभूतं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. So, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to folks who have joined for the 34th session of Mundaka Upanishad or Atharvana Upanishad. So let's think about the rishis, Atharva, Angira, Satyavaha, Angirasa, Shuanaka, and all the acharyas who have given us the bhashya of these wonderful, wonderful Upanishads. Devata is Aksharanamaka Paramatma, and the Chandas is Anishtubha and others. So we are currently doing Dvitiya Mundake, Dvitiya Kandaha, and we are in this fourth and the fifth verse. So we have done the first three exhaustively, where the core idea of the first two verses is that there is this Antaryamin inside us, and he is there for a purpose. And what is that purpose? He is there inside us, not only controlling us, but he is waiting for us as jivas to actually go inwards and see him. Avihi sannihitam guhacharam nama mahatpadam atra etad arpitam yejat pranat nimishat yadetat yad etajjanata sadasadvarenyam param vijnanat varishtam prajananam. So, but to see him, so us as jivas need to go inwards to see him. To see him is not an easy task. It is a battle. And that is how Angirasa approaches this problem as to how do we see him. And he reminds us that this is not an easy job. Folks who think that to see Paramatma is very easy, good luck to them, because this is a difficult task. We probably need millions of births to even get there. And our gurus teach us that it probably takes births after births to even be interested in Adhyatma. It takes millions of births to be even interested in Upanishads. And it takes millions of births to even not just being interested in reading the Upanishads or the Vedas, but to actually understand the Upanishads and the languages of the Vedas, and then, find our journey towards liberation. So this is a very, very difficult yuddha. And he says, Yad archimat, yad anubhyo anuhu, cha yasmin lokaha nihitaha lokinashcha. Tadetad aksharam brahma, sa pranaha, taduvang manaha, tadetad satyam, tadamrutam, tad vedavyam somya viddhi. So this guy is nothing material. He is not a madhyama parinama like Agni. He is not very subtle like Anoranyan. He's smaller than the smallest. But still we can't hit the target. He is bigger than the biggest, Mahato Mahihan, so we can't hit him. He is like Agni, he is Madhyama Parinama, we still can't hit him. So what is the process here? That is what Angirasa is teaching us by using these beautiful verses, isn't it? Dhanur Gruhitva, Upanishadam Mahastram, Sharamhi Upasa, Nishitam Sandadita, Ayamya Tadbhava Gatena Chetasa, Lakshyam Tadeva Aksharam Somya Viddhi. Okay, so we did these three, and now we are kind of, finishing off this last verse. Pranavo danuhu sharohi atma brahmatal laksham uchyate apramattena vedavyam sharavat tanmayo bhavet yasmin dyau prithvi cha antariksham otam manaha saha pranaishta sarvaihi tam ekam janata atmanam anyavacha munchata amrutasya esha setuhu. So this is the fifth verse. So hopefully we will enter into the fifth verse and we'll finish the fourth verse in all its details. Okay. So what are we actually looking at in this process? So what Angirasa is telling us is the core Vedic philosophy. This is the core Vedic philosophy that we need to understand. that there is something called the paroksha jnana, where we use our material indriyas and our material mind to have a view of who this Paramatma could be, what is that Paravidya, who that Paramatma could be. And that mental construct stage, using our sadhana sharira, we obtain certain knowledge of Paramatma. So that is called paroksha jnana. But Angirasa and the Vedas consistently tell us that we need to go to a deeper level. That is called aparoksha jnana, where we have a direct experience of God or our Antaryaman. Because in Brahma Sutra, Veda Vyasa has made it very clear, unless we reach this stage, unless we reach the aparoksha jnana stage, there is no karma kshaya. The karma, the karmic imprints that is there in our linga sharira is never going to be eradicated, because we have accumulated so much from all the millions and millions of births before. We have accumulated so many karmas. And this aparoksha jnana is the stage where Paramatma removes the karma. So that is very, very, very important, because if we have karmic imprints, we're going to be in the cycles of birth and rebirth again and again. And that our cycle of birth and rebirth goes away only when we have aparoksha jnana, when Paramatma with his grace then removes the karmic imprints on our linga sharira. So that is why aparoksha jnana is important. And then, of course, after aparoksha jnana is moksha. Okay, once the souls attain aparoksha jnana, it is a given that at some point they will attain moksha, but still there is something called the prarabdha karma that they have to exhaust before they go to Satyaloka, be with Chaturmukha Brahma, then cross the Viraja Nadi, and then go to the transempirical plane. This is the view of Brahma Sutra, Veda Vyasa, who has summarized all the Vedas. So there really isn't any shortcut. If we think there is a shortcut, good luck, and please give me that route. I will also adopt that. But the Vedas don't give us a shortcut. This is a long marathon towards our liberation. So to bring home the truth, of course, Angirasa went through this verse, isn't it? Dhanur gruhitva aupanishadam mahastram sharam hi upasa sandirita. Ayamya tadbhavagatena chetasa lakshyam tadeva aksharam somya viddhi. And then he said, that is at a paroksha jnana stage. You reading the Upanishad and the Vedas and understanding what it means, it is still a material construct, Shuanaka, because what are you doing? You're hearing the Vedas through your material indriyas. You are reading the Vedas through your eyes. That sense information that comes from your retina and your cochlear areas in your inner ear, the nerve impulses are going to the brain. The brain then processes it. Mind is an evolute of the brain. The mind then processes it. And then the various components of the mind processes it, and they present it to the jiva. And the jiva then says, now I am aware. Yeah, the consciousness is the symptom of the soul. Let's not forget it. What is it conscious of? Conscious of itself and conscious of things outside it. So outside it is the data that is presented by the mind, and the jiva is aware of the data that is presented by the mind, and it says, now I'm aware. What is it aware of? It is aware of the knowledge that comes from paroksha indriyas. So that is why it is called paroksha jnana. So that so our Angirasa then says, you have to go inside, more deeper into the Upanishads and the Vedas. And then he says, Pranavo Danuhu, Sharohi Atma, Brahmata Lakshamuchyate, Apramattena Vedavyam, Sharavat Tanmayo Bhave. So there we understood there are two steps, steps 2A and 2B. 2A is this pranava, we still bind in our mind, we meditate, dhyana, right? Shravana, manana, and dhyana. We may meditate Om, we may meditate that. Okay. Paroksha jnana, but that paroksha jnana should be how? That is what we are going to do today and complete it. Not just as a sound. That will be a very superficial understanding of the philosophy of pranava or Om, Omkara. Not just as a sound, but we need to understand the whole meaning of what the pranava Om is. Okay? And that is, with that understanding, if we do the meditation of Om, then we may reach a stage where our mind may become so still that then our jiva swarupa itself, so our jiva swarupa, we as jivas have, our shastra says, eternal indriyas, the eternal mind, the eternal eyes and the ears and so on. That is non-different from the jiva itself. So that is called the eternal indriyas. So the eternal indriyas then turns inwards and sees its antaryami. That is the Step 2B or the Aparoksha Jnana. What is that Aparoksha Jnana target? Our Angirasa has already said, Laksham Tadeva Aksharam. Okay, the target for you is that Aksharam. And Brahma Tal Laksham Uchyate in these two verses, verse 3 and 4, very clearly saying that Akshara and Brahma are all the same, and that is your target. Your target, yeah, you are not Akshara, you are not Brahma. Watch the language of the Angirasa, absolutely clear. He says that is your target. Your target means what? You is different and your target is different. So you are hitting the target. Clear, exhibition of difference that Angirasa says in his language. He says in his language, in sense, what he sees, what he has perceived, that what we call as Mundaka Upanishad. Okay? So last week, I think it was Anand Kulkarni ji who actually reminded us that the very syllable Omkara is also like a Dhanus, is also like a bow. And I found a picture in Google Image to illustrate this point very, very nicely. Pranavo Dhanuhu. Okay? This Pranava, if you look at the way in which Pranava is written, that looks like a Dhanus, that looks like a bow. You look at these curves here, that curve and the Omkara is pretty much the same. Okay, so Pranavo Dhanuhu. Okay. And then, of course, we have done this before. Sharohi Atma. The arrow is either your mind or the Jiva Swarupa itself. What is the target? Brahmata Lakshya Michate. The Brahman is the target. And that Apramattena Vedyamyam, you have to learn this and know this very, very, very carefully. We cannot be distracted. If we distract, this arrow is going to go to some other target. To hit the target, the arrow has to be very focused. And that is the meaning of apramattena vedavyam. And then what happens? This sharabat, then this arrow goes to the target and sticks to the target and never comes out of it. It's constantly in synchrony with the target. It doesn't become the target. The analogy is very clear. You have the target, you have the arrow. The arrow is the arrow, the target is the target. But what happens to the arrow, that is you and me? We become self-realized, we know our own nature, and we also know that we are the eternal servants of Paramatma, and we are in constant companionship with him in the moksha sthiti. So that is the beautiful illustration of Sharavat Tanmayo Bhavit. So this pranava there becomes super, super important, isn't it? Pranavo Dhanuhu. So we were looking at this last week at the tail end of last week. We were looking at what is this Om, what does it mean? What is the etymology of Om? Why is it such a big deal in Vedantic philosophy and Vedic philosophy? What actually is it? What is the science of Om? So we were looking at this. So let's go back and start off with where we left and then make progress. Okay, so what is it? So I think it was Sheila ji who mentioned that pranava is a primordial sound. Yeah, and that's very true, because we understand that when Vedavyasa says Janmadhyasya yataha Om Janmadhyasya yataha, why does he say? The very first verse is Om Om Atato Brahma Jijnasa Om Janmadhyasya yataha Om. So at the start of creation, how does Brahman bring those, vibrations into the Mula Prakriti so that they can then start mixing up and form the further, components of matter? So by saying Om Atataha, that is how he starts. That is why the first sutra is very beautiful. Om Atataha. Om is the first word that comes out of the breath of Brahman. Ata is the next. Ataha is the third. Okay, Om Atataha. So that Om then starts the vibration. And then the creation comes about in the being. So in that sense, Om is a primordial sound. But do we stop there? Absolutely not. We need to go further into the philosophy of Om. So last week, my audio system didn't work. And this week, I hope it works, because I found this website in washington.edu. So some folks apparently have captured the sound of the Big Bang. Okay, so let's try and play this. And probably you will be able to appreciate that the sound reminds very much like Om. Okay, so let's see how it goes. So hopefully you heard that sound of the sound of the Big Bang. So if you want to believe this, that is how the Big Bang sounded like, our Vedic philosophers would say, so that sounds very much like how we utter Om with its 8 components. Remember, we're going to come to that. Om has got 8 components. If you put all the 8 components, then this is how the Om will sound like. Okay? Would say our Vedic philosophers. And of course, there is a recording of the sound of the Big Bang. You may want to believe it, you may not want to believe it. I leave it to you, but I thought this was an interesting analogy. So that is a primordial sound of the Big Bang. Then, of course, there is the whole lot of literature out there talking about the science of Om. And that is not the focus for today's talk. Science of Om, talking about the sound vibration Om, how it can change the metabolic functions of the brain and how it can change the functionings of the mind and so on. So there's lots of papers that we picked up, how Omkara recitation can lower your blood pressure, how there can be functional magnetic resonance imaging study shows that, it changes the dynamics of the brain function when you recite Omkara. Yeah, I mean, those are all some of the studies that you would find in the literature. So Google it. It's interesting. So that is, I would broadly classify them as the science of Om. But that is the material science. That is Aparavidya. Okay, we are talking about Paravidya. That is what Angirasa wants us to think about when we think about Omkara. So what we will do today is summarize the further 10 meanings of Omkara. Of course, Om, our gurus, of course, teach us the understanding Om never stops, because Om is the summary of the Vedas. Vedas is infinite. So to really understand in all its depth and glories of Omkara, we should know all of the Vedas. That means we should know the infinite Vedas. Then we might be able to fully appreciate the Omkara. But none of us can do this. Yeah? Let's not kid ourselves. We all have our own limitations with regards to how we can grasp the Vedic philosophy. What is the clarity of knowledge that we are going to get? So based on our individual capacities, we have a clarity of knowledge of who the Omkara is. Okay, so that is an important point to state there. So what did we do last time? The first approach we understand is, yes, Om could be the sound of the Big Bang, but that is a very materialistic view of things. That is a very superficial, although it is a profound philosophy of creation, from a Vedic philosophy perspective, it is a very superficial understanding. Okay? The very first approach of knowing Omkara is, Om is the name of the supreme Akshara, who is the hero of the Mundaka Upanishad, the Atharvana Upanishad. Pranava, Om, Brahman, Akshara, Narayana are one and the same. And last week we had quite a few verses that we looked at, isn't it? Many Upanishads, the very first verse will always start with Om. Mandukya Upanishad, Om ityetad aksharam idang sarvam. Keno Katha Upanishad says, when it says Sarva Vedaha Yet Padam Amananti, it says, very briefly I say that Tatte Padam Sangrahena Bravimi Om ityetat. Chandogya Upanishad, Om iti etad aksharam udgitam upasita. Pranava Vidya Taittiriya Upanishad, Om iti Brahma. Okay, and of course, Gita is so important. Let's think about the Brahma Sutra here. Bring the Prasthanatraya. Every sutra of Brahma Sutra, you start with Om. Om Om Atato Brahma Jignasa Om. Om Janmadyasya Yataha Om. Om Shastrayonitvat Om. Om Tattu Samanvayat Om. Om Ikshatehe Na Ashabdam Om. So every sutra, the very first 5 sutras, the Panchadikarani, and of course the 564 aphorisms of sutras, they all start with Om because it's such an important word. Look at Gita. Yeah. So last week we picked up 2 verses, 8:13 and 17:23. Omiti etad aksharam. Exactly the same as Mandukya Upanishad. Omiti etad aksharam. Omiti etad aksharam. Omiti ekaksharam. Om tat saditi nirdeshaha. 17:23. So today I picked up a new, because just before this class we were reciting chapter 7. There, what does it say? Raso aham apsu kaunteya prabhavasmi sashi suryayoho pranavaha sarvavedeshu shabdaha ke paurusham rushu. So in that particular chapter in 7, pranavaha sarvavedeshu. Okay, so Krishna says, it's very, very clear of the language of the Gita that Omkara is Akshara, is Krishna. Okay. And the same is what is said everywhere. So Om is not just a sound. It can be a sound, but the sound, it should denote something, isn't it? The sound is the name of Supreme Akshara or Brahman or Narayana that is being described here. So that is the very first understanding of Om is it is a name of Paramatma. It is his name. And that gives an indication of the attributes of Paramatma, which is what the next 9 aspects or understandings of Omkara, which I want to do today, will give us an idea. Why 10? I just took 10 because, as I said, it's infinite, it never stops. But 10 is important. So who is going to answer? It's a quick quiz here. When I say 10, yeah, Dasha. Okay, what does that signify? What does Dasha stands for? Who is going to come in and share their views on this, please?
Is it in Purusha Suktam Atyatishta Dashangulam, which means he's way, way above us.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Sushil. That is a very interesting view of looking at it. Anybody else? Any other views there?
Dasha Shabda also indicates the infinity, right? So Dasha, Sagasra also indicate infinity.
Beautiful.
So,
Thank you very much. Sorry, who was that answering? I'm not able to see the video today.
Narayanan from Phoenix. So.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Narayanji. Yeah, absolutely the right side. Dasha Pramatim. You remember that Dasha, Shata, Sahasra, they all Ananta Vachakaha as Narayanji very beautifully mentioned. So Dasha gives an idea of the infinity. Yeah, which is what we are talking about, right? So I thought we will just take 10 and then discuss about this. So the approach to is Akhanda Shabda. So when you look at Om as a Akhanda Shabda, as one word, and it comes from 2 dhatus, right? And we looked at this, Avadhatu and Uyi Dhatu. So in the Avadhatu, there are various meanings here. 8 I have given here. You can pick it up later and revise this. But the most important ones you probably need to remember is Avagata iti Om, omniscience. Avapraveshe iti Om, antaryamin. Okay. Uyi Dhatu is very important. Uyate iti Om, that which holds the universe together. Okay. And Otatvachihi, Omkaraha, Vyaktiyaso, Tadguno, Tatam, Anuvyakyana, Srimadacharya gives a fundamental definition. And of course, in Rig Bhashya, Om Asesha Gunodara iti Narayano Apyaso. Okay. Very, very clear statements from Srimadacharya about Om means Otatvachi, that which is filled with infinite gunas. What gunas? Not material gunas. Transempirical, non-material, auspicious gunas defines this Brahman, who is called as Om. Okay. So when you look at the Akhanda as a word itself, remember Avadhatu and Uyi Dhatu. Uyi Dhatu is going to come up in the next verse. So remember that Ota. Yeah. Otatvachi, Otam, Protam, those are all the languages of the Upanishads. Remember that because Angirasa is going to sort of bring that up in the next verse. Okay. So we understand in the Akhanda Shabda, that is the meaning of Brahman. Then it is a concept of God. Who is this? Okay, you are saying he's filled with gunas and so on, but what is this concept of God all about? That is your approach number 3, where now you start thinking about splitting that Omkara. Okay, so I've not taken one here where the Omkara can be split into 2 components, O and Makara. O comes from Akara and Ukara. A plus U becomes O, and then you have Makara. So that is what is discussed here. Okay, when in Taittiriya Upanishad it says Om. Here you see Om iti etad anukrutir hasmava. Api Oshravayet Ashravayanti. Oshravayet of the Pranava Vidya is that component which we will skip for today's discussion, but we will go directly to Akara, Ukara, and Makara. Okay. So Akara, we understood last week, this Akara is a Nisheda Vachakaha. So it gives you the opposites. So this entity is opposite of anything that we know. Allah, Illa, Viruddha. Okay. He is Sarva Vilakshana, that is, he is entirely different from the material world. Okay, that is one fundamental definition of Brahman is he is Sarva Vilakshana, Neti Neti. Upanishad statement, Brihadaranyaka, Chandogya, they say the same. Allah, he is Sarva Vilakshana, he is nothing material. Illa, he has no dosha. Opposite, Viruddha, he is Gunapurna, Otatvachi. So that is what Akara is. So initially we said if you understand the concept of God through a negative approach, then you start moving to a positive approach. Why is this guy so different? Because he's Uttama, Utkrishta, he is far beyond matter and the jivas and even the Shri Tattva Lakshmi. He is far, far beyond. And as Sushrut ji so beautifully said, Atyadishta Dasangulam. He is infinitely different from anything. Okay? So Uttama, Utkrishta. But as per our capacity, as per the jiva's capacity, we can know him. He is knowable. Yeah. If something is so beyond matter, why bother? And then it becomes unknowable, isn't it? But the Upanishads, the Veda says he is so big, but still you can know him as per your capacity. That's how Srimad Acharya cites Garuda Purana here. Pashyanto api na pashyanti mero rupam vipaschitaha. Just like how I can touch the Meru mountain and still know it is there. I may not able to hug it, in completely, but I can touch it. Similarly, I can touch this Brahman as per my capacity. I may not be able to understand him or hug him completely. Okay, so that is the beautiful meaning of Akara, Ukara, and Makara, that he is knowable. He is beyond matter and he is so supreme, but we can still know him. The next question is, how on earth do we know him? Through the Vedas. And that is again is the message for Akara, Ukara, and Makara. Akara stands for Padya, which is Rig Veda. Ukara stands for Gadya, which is Yajur Veda. And Makara stands for Gana, which is Sama Veda. So this is poetry, prose, and music. Those are the three. Those are the three only known, communications for sentient beings like you and me. Okay? How is that? Is it just a sentimental statement? No. Look at this. Akara. The very first verse of Rig Veda is Agni Mile Akara, and it finishes with Susahasati Ikara. It finishes off with Ikara. Yajurveda immediately starts Ishetvor Jetva Ikara. And then it finished with Samudro Bandhu. So with Akara and Ukara, we have the whole Yajurveda and Rig Veda compressed. And if you look at Samaveda, it starts with Agna and then begins and finishes off with Samudro Bandhu. Sorry, Bruhaspati Dadatu. It finishes with Ukara. So Akara and Ukara is also Samaveda. But Samaveda is, what is Samaveda after all? It is Rig Veda set in music, right? Primarily. So that is why it is Akara and Ukara. But then there is the music component to it. Om. That Makara in music denotes the Samaveda. Okay, so we can know this Paramatma through the Vedas. That is the approach number 4. So that takes us to this idea of why is Om called the Bijakshara mantra. Okay, so look at this. Akshara, the hero of the Mundaka Upanishad. A plus Ksha plus Ra. Akara to Kshakara is the Vedas. Okay. He who is Ramate, he who knows, he who celebrates the Paramatma, who understands the Paramatma in all the Vedas, which is compressed in Akara and Kshakara. And these Vedas are what? Eternal. Again, that is the meaning of Akshara. Okay, so Omkara is called Bijakshara mantra, like a USB stick, as we have seen before, exactly for this, because Padya, Gadya, and Gana, Akara, Ukara, and Makara, the whole of the Vedic philosophy is compressed in this Omkara. If you think Omkara is the seed, it then grows into this huge tree called the Vedas. Okay, with so many branches and everything else that we have done, shakas, upashakas, all the Vedangas and everything else you put it, that is one magnificent tree if you like. And it starts off with the seed called the Omkara. So that is why Om is called the Bijakshara mantra that we should never, ever forget. So the next question is, okay, you through Akara, Ukara, and Makara, that is Rig, Yajus, and Sama, we can know this Paramatma. So now we are doing a new idea for today's satsang. How is God known in the Vedas? Okay, so Vedas are infinite, right? How many births do I have to take to even know a fraction of the Vedas? Probably millions. It just seems like an impossible task for us to know him. But again, the Omkara itself gives you a shortened version of it. That is the greatness of this Omkara mantra. It says God can be known as how in the Vedas. Akara, Ukara, Makara. Akara stands for Ananda. Makara stands for Mana. Mana means Jnanam. Manam, Jnanam. Sarvajna. And of course, Mundaka has said, is Sarvajnaha Sarvavid Jnanamayam Tapaha. This guy is full of knowledge and this guy is full of Ananda. Utkarsha, highest levels. We as souls, when we are liberated, we may have a small fraction of Jnanananda. Our Jnanananda again is Brahman's Anananda is infinitely different. Okay, this is another thing that we need to understand. Not only is Brahman's Jnanananda is infinitely higher than the Jiva, but his type of Jnanananda, our rishis tell us, is infinitely different from the Swarupananda that we have. Okay, so those are all the higher levels of Upanishadic philosophy that we can capture from this. So that Brahman is Jnananandamaya. Okay, that is the fundamental definition of Brahman, if you like. And even Veda Vyasa says, what are the rules in which Veda Vyasa said, if you want to meditate on this Paramatma, he said, of course, Tattva Bhimani Devatas, and Rijus like Vayu Tattva, Chaturmukha Brahma will know the clarity of Brahman or about the Vishnu, about the Vedas in an entirely different angle. Shri Tattva may know it in even better clarity and extent. And then the Tattva Bhimani Devatas may do it to some extent. Coming all the way to us, like you and me sitting in this satsang, let's assume that at some point, we are going to attain moksha. Okay. So for us to attain that moksha, the knowledge from the Vedas that we need to have, and to do that dhyana, Shravana, Manana, and dhyana, right? And the dhyana, Veda Vyasa gives us a very, very simple formula based on our capacities, taking that, let's say the lowest level of jiva that is heading towards moksha. What are the 4 components by which he has to do upasana? Okay, so anybody wants to take that quiz. What are the 4 components that Veda Vyasa has said, which is very relevant to what we are discussing at this point? Anybody want to take that? The 4 essential aspects of Brahman that needs to be meditated. Sat, Chit, Ananda, Atma. 4. Minimum you need is 4. Sat, Chit, Ananda, Atma. Okay. So Sat, Chit and Ananda, you know. Atma. So what does that Atma there mean? So who wants to tell us what that Atma there means? The 4th component, which is so important. Who is that Atma? Very relevant to the second Mundaka, second Khanda that we are doing at this point. Who is that Atma?
Atma is Hari, right? Paripurna. Atma means Paripurna, right?
Yeah, Atma is Paripurna. The other one is Atma is my Swami, my controller, my Antaryamin. Yeah. So the 4 aspect. Thank you, Narayanji. So the 4 aspect. So Sat, Chit, Ananda, Atma. Okay, this guy is Sat, Nirdushta, Gunapurna, full of knowledge. He is blissful. And he is inside me as my Antaryamin, and he is my controller. He is my Swami. So those are the 4 basic requisites that Veda Vyasa has said. Yeah. So this is the rules of Veda Vyasa in Brahma Sutra, that we have to take at least 4 and then meditate on this. So it gives you an idea of the knowledge. How should God be known in the Vedas? He should be known as Akara, Ukara, and Makara. Very similar to Mandukya Upanishad or Mandukya Upanishad. Omiti etad aksharang idang sarvam tasya upavyakyanam. Idang sarvam. Idang means what? It could be this universe or inside you. Etate means inside you. Idam means in front. Ayam means this. Okay, understand these languages. Idam and etat, it comes, as you know, always in the Upanishad. So idang sarvam. God is everything or God is in everything. The philosophy there is God is not everything. God is God. He's a unique being. Okay. He uses Mula Prakriti and creates the universe, but he is not everything. To say that he is everything means that God transforms himself into a jada. That is bringing him down. That is the view of Tattvavada. We don't bring God down by saying that you transform into a stone and a dirty thing and this and that. No, he is entirely different. And again, our Upanishads say, Asango hi evam purushaha. He is always unattached with matter. Okay, but he controls it. So God is in everything. Sorry, Narayan, do you want to come in?
No, I want to know the difference, idam and ayam, both in front of this and this. What is the subtle difference?
So idam means that which is in front of you, very close to you, very close to you, in front of you. I am means you can point out and say that I am. Yeah, I am. So it can be a little far off. This, it is just about the distance, Narayanji. Idam is very close. I am means, you can put your finger and say it's a little far. Okay. So
So
God is,
Saga also far,
yeah,
right? What?
yeah, you can use that also. Yeah. So
Okay.
God is in everything. Okay. So again, 1140. Anybody wants to recite 1140, please? Who wants to go for 1140? Very important. That gives you an idea of what Sarvam means. That will base the understanding of when I say God is everything, actually I mean God is in everything. Who wants to
Shall
go?
I do, Madhu? Shall I?
Yeah, Sheilaji, go for it. Thank you.
Namah purastadath prishtataste namostu te sarvata eva sarva ananta viryamavita vikramastvam sarvam samapnoshi tatosi sarvaha.
Thank you, Sheilaji. So Arjuna is categorically clear. In the last line, he said, you are called Sarvam Krishna because sam apnoshi tato asi sarvaha. You are inside everything. You have pervaded everything. That is why you are called Sarvam. Okay. And in Vishnu Sahasrama, Sarvaha is the name of Vishnu. So you have to put all this and understand this particular verse. Manduk, it seems a little out of context, but very important in this philosophy where Idam Sarvam, Idam, this in front of me is Sarvam. He is called Sarva. Why? Because he is all pervasive. Okay. So it doesn't mean he is everything. He is in everything is the language of Veda Vyasa in Gita. Okay. So how has he pervaded this creation and beyond is the next question. That is why it becomes relevant. And that again, you need to know the Omkara. Tasya, Mandukya Upanishad, what did it say? ओमिति एतदक्षरम् इदं सर्वं तस्य उपव्याख्यानं तस्य उपपन्न व्याख्यानम्. How is he known? भूतभवद् भविष्यदिति सर्वम् ओंकार एव यच्चान्यात् त्रिकालातीतं तदपि ओंकार एव. It's a beautiful verse of Mandukya Upanishad. We've dealt with it a lot. So when we understand that this guy is Jnananandamaya and that he is all pervasive, it gives you an idea there. So this guy is all pervasive. He is inside you as your Antaryamin, but he is everywhere, all pervasive. Antar Bahishta. Who wants to tell that from Narayana Upanishad? Anybody wants to go for that verse? Antar Bahishta Tat Sarvam Vyapya Narayana Stitaha. You can never forget that. So that is the definition of Brahman, which is what Omkara is all about. How do we know that? Link up Mandukya Upanishad here. What does Mandukya Upanishad says? Bhuta Bhavat Bhavishyaditi Sarvam Omkara Eva. So now that leads us to the further expansion of Omkara. Okay, so we said Omkara is Akhanda Shabda, or it can be O and M, or it can be Akara, Ukara, Makara, or it can be Akara, Ukara, Makara, Nada. Or it can be even understood as 6 components, Akara, Ukara, Makara, Nada, Bindu, Kala. Or if you want to go even deeper, 8, Akara, Ukara, Makara, Nada, Bindu, Kala, Shanta, Atishanta. So when you heard that initial Big Bang noise, it starts with Atishanta, Shanta, Kala, Bindu, Nada, and then goes up. Okay. So this is how it opens up. Now we will see how can he be understood as somebody who is all pervasive. All pervasive means what? Okay. All pervasive. That takes us to the approach number 6. Akara, Ukara, and Makara. There stands for Atita, past. Ukara, Utpanna, present. Makara, Meya, Nirmeya, future. So this entity is unchanging and always existed, past, present, and future. It is all pervasive in time. So who is going to tell us the definition of Brahman? Anybody wants to share with us the definition of Brahman, which is the meaning of Omkara, right? So let's pause for a minute and get folks to think about what is the definition of Brahman itself.
Masvitanji, what you taught us, is that the one? Narayanaya Paripurna Gunarnavaya. Is that the one? Vishvodaya Sthitilaya Niyati Pradaya. Jnanapradaaya Vibuddhasura Saukya Dukkha Satkaranaya Vitataya Namo Namaha.
Yeah, thank you, Pratibhaji. Very, very beautifully recited. So that could be one understanding of Brahman. But let's not forget Brahman. Etymology of Brahman is what I'm after. Who wants to take us through the etymology of Brahman? Who is,
This is
what is
Brihanto hi asmin gunaha.
Beautiful, Shilaji. Well done. So, Brihanto hi asmin gunaha, that which is all pervasive. In what? All pervasive in time, all pervasive in space, and all pervasive in gunas. None of us are, including Lakshmi has also got a limitation, okay? We are not all pervasive in all three. You and me as jivas may be all pervasive in time, but certainly not in gunas. Yeah, 100% not, and not in space. Lakshmi is all pervasive in space and time, but not in gunas. Whereas it is Brahman alone who is all pervasive in time, space, and guna. That is the meaning. Brihat, that which is big. What big? In time, space, and gunas. Brihanto hi asmin gunaha. Thank you, Shilaji. Beautiful. So that is what the Omkara talks about. That this guy is all pervasive. Akara, Ukara, Makara. Okay. And he is all pervasive in what? He is all pervasive in his creation, maintenance, and destruction. The one that Pratibhaji very beautifully recited that about the eightfold cosmic dispensation. But here, when we look at the three, we look at the three aspects of creation. Our Veda Vyasa is very clear. Skanda Purana gives that evidence. Taittiriya Upanishad talks about it. That the purview of Brahman is not just three, as some folks think it is, but actually it is eight, okay, which will come to it as we navigate today's slides. So he is all pervasive everywhere. Okay, like what? Bhuta Bhavat Bhavishya. This Bhuta Bhavat Bhavishya is what Swaha, Bhuvaha, Bhuhu is. As you know, Rigbhasha Acharya has given the definition of all the Om, the Pranava, the Vyahriti, and the Gayatri, and the Purusha Shukta, and the Vedas, and all the sounds of the universe. The very first verse, go back and kind of think about this, where that Bhuta Bhavat Bhavishyat, Akara, Ukara, Makara also stands for Swaha, Bhuvaha, Bhu, Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha. Bhuloka, Bhuvarloka, Suvarloka. By Suvarloka, we mean all the others above this. Janaloka, Tapaloka, Mahaloka, and Satyaloka, the abode of Chaturmukha Brahma. Or Bhuloka, below that. Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, Patala. Okay. So think about this Chaturmukha Brahma and his lotus. How many petals does this lotus have? Who is going to answer that question very quickly?
14.
14 petals. Beautiful. Thank you very much. That 14 petals is there. This guy does this whole Brahmanda, but our Vishnu pervades all this. That is, he's all pervasive in space. That is the idea there. Okay. So that is all pervasive in space. Approach 9. Akara, Ukara, Makara. Ananta, Madhuva, Ucha, Unnata. Swaha, Bhuvaha, Bhuhu, Bhu, Purno, Bhutivaro, Bhuvaha, Ananta Sukho, Yad Vyahriti Riritaha. As you remember from Rigbhasha, Acharya has said. So that Akara, Ukara, Makara then becomes the expansion of, your Vyahriti, Bhur, Bhuvas, Suvaha. And that Bhur, Bhuvas, Suvaha there not only means all pervasive, but he is also Purna. He is Bhutivara, Ananta Sukha. Purna, we know he is complete. Bhuti, Varaha, he is the highest. Ananta Sukha, infinitely blissful. That is what that Bhur, Bhuva, Suvaha is. Not just these three lands, space, Suvaha, Bhuvaha, and Bhu. That is one view. But we got to go deeper into philosophy and understand what is the language of the Vedas, where Akara stands for Purnatva, Ukara stands for Bhutivara, Makara stands for Ananta Sukha. That is why the Gayatri mantra starts with Om Bhur Bhuvassuva Tat Savitur Varenyam and so on. Okay. So Om equals Akshara equals Sarvaha. Therefore, Mandukya Upanishad declares Sarvam Omkara Eva. Yeah, so that creates a little bit of confusion with some schools. But for Tattvavada, it's very, very clear. This Omkara Vachya God is Sarvam. He is omnipresent and he is omnipotent. Okay. And that he is in all this. He is in the past and he is everywhere, right? Akshoti iti aksharaha, as we understood the etymology of akshara. So he is everywhere. He was, He is, he will be in everything, omnipresent. He is omnipotent. Okay, so those are all some of the ideas that you will get from understanding Omkar. And at this point, is very, very important to also link this up about the four components of Om: Akara, Ukara, Makara, and Nada. Okay, so here is the beauty of the philosophy of Om when we understand Jaya Vijaya. So who is going to share us what is the story of Jaya Vijaya? Anybody wants to give us a brief summary of this Jaya Vijaya story, please? Who wants to take it up? What is the philosophy?
Yeah, Chitra is going to say.
Chitraji, go for it.
When the Sanat Kumaras, the four Kumaras, when they were trying to have a darshan from Lord Narayana, they stopped them, Jaya and Vijaya, and they were cursed by them to go as, they were given, then Krishna, Lord Narayana came out. Is that the correct story I'm saying?
Go for it, Chitraji. Please complete your assessment. Yeah.
Okay. Then Narayana came down and he said like, oh, I am asking forgiveness on behalf of my devotees. Please forgive them. Then Kumara said like, okay, the curse is given, but they can choose whether, they can be demons and come back to you in some few janmas, or stay there in the Bhuloka, something like that. So that's why they were born as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, Shishupala, and I can't remember the other name, but in each gen, and Ravana and Kumbhakarna, like that. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Chitraji. I think you captured most of it. Fantastic. Well done. So, yeah, so that is the, as you know, there is the subtle points there is Jaya Vijaya are not in, they are not in the Vaikunta. If you're inside Vaikunta, if you're in the non-material plane, you can never come back. They are in what is called Amukta Sthana. Amukta Sthana before the Mukta Sthana. So, these guys are the Dwarapalakas. They are hanging out, and as Chitraji very beautifully recited that incident. So our two Jaya Vijaya, they come down, right? In which yugas, Chitraji? Do you want to tell us which yugas they come down in? So Chitraji has gone off link. So Kruta Yuga, Treta Yuga, and Dwapara Yuga. So those are the four yugas in which they take three. They come thrice, right? And they go against Paramatma. So you know, read up about the story. So these guys are directly linked to Omkara. Why? Because if you look at the four aspects, Akara, Ukara, Makara, and Nada. Okay. So they define four names of Paramatma. And you can go back to Mandukya Upanishad and understand Vishwa, Tejasa, Prajna, and Turiya. So what are these four stages of consciousness? The Jivas, as we discussed, the Jivas Antaryamin is this Brahman, and he controls the various conscious states of the Jivas. Yeah. Remember Satchit Ananda Atma, that Atma there is the controller. My Antaryamin is my controller. He controls what? He controls our states of consciousness. What are the four states of consciousness? Jagrati Sthana, Swapna Sthana, Sushupti Sthana, Turiya Sthana. Those are the four states of consciousness of the Jivas. And those four states of the consciousness of the Jivas is controlled by four. It's controlled by Paramatma, who is one and the same, but we celebrate him in four names. What are those four names? Vishwa, Vishwambara Murti with 19 faces. Tejasa, Vishwambara Murti with 19 faces. Prajna, one form. Turiya is the state of the consciousness of the Jivas that is controlled by Paramatma in Moksha Sthiti or Turiya. So those are the four states of the Jivas, consciousness of the Jivas that is controlled by this Antaryamin, who is here called Om. But our Vedas, of course, he's got infinite names, isn't it? So for our Upasana, it gives various names. What are those names? You will all be very familiar with the four Vyuha forms of Paramatma. Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Vasudeva. So the contemplation there is Aniruddha is Turiya, Pradyumna is Prajna, Sankarshana is Tejasa, and Vasudeva is Vishwa form. And then when you bring it in the Kruta Yuga, Treta Yuga, and Dwapara Yuga, the Aniruddha is Varaha, Pradyumna is Narasimha, Sankarshana is Rama, Vasudeva is Krishna. No wonder he is called Vasudeva Krishna. Okay, Vasudeva is Krishna. So what does Krishna do? Shishupala and Dantavakra, as Chitraji very beautifully said. What do Shishupala and Dantavakra denote? Dvesha and Krodha. In Treta Yuga, in Ramavatara, what happened? Ravana and Kumbhakarna came in. What is Ravana symbolic of? Kama, unnecessary desires against Vedic dictums. Yeah, Kama. Kumbhakarna is what? Sleep, ignorance, and moha. He sleeps a lot, right? Kumbhakarna is sleep, ignorance, and moha. Ravana denotes his embodiment of Kama. Okay? And these two guys, Jaya and Vijaya, come as these two. Okay? Then, of course, in Kruta Yuga, you have the Varaha Avatara, and you have the Narasimha Avatara and the Varaha Avatara. Narasimha Avatara does what? Hiranyakashipu. What does Hiranyakashipu literally means? He who hides money under the pillow. Moha for money, moha for material wealth, material things. Hiranya Aksha. Aksha means that fellow who is always seeing money, who is totally materialistic. He is Hiranyaksha. Hiranya Aksha, Hiranya Kashipu. Kashipu means pillow, right? So he who hides wealth under his pillow. And he who is always looking at wealth means always materialistic. So what happens to Varaha Avatara? Varaha Avatara, then, we all know that too. We have done Isha Upanishad, where there is a lot of Varaha, Swayambhu, Manu, Yajnanamaka, Paramatma, all those things comes up. So Varaha kills Hiranyaksha, Narasimha kills Hiranyakashipu, Rama kills Ravana and Kumbhakarna, and then Krishna kills Shishupala and Dantavakra in the Dwapara Yuga. So this essentially is Akara, Ukara, Makara, and Nada. Okay. And why is this important? Yes, the story is interesting, but there is a subtle philosophy that again our gurus teach us. You shut these doors. When you shut these doors of materialistic aspirations, of always looking for material things, sleep, ignorance, moha, unnecessary desires, kama, krodha, dvesha, all those things, you shut that door, then Jaya and Vijaya open the door for your liberation. Okay, so that is the deeper philosophies of understanding these stories described in Bhagavatam and other areas. So I hope you find this interesting, that links Jaya Vijaya to Omkara and bring it into our daily lives as to why that Omkara Chintana is interesting, because it will also remind you of these stories. Okay. Then, of course, there is the eightfold aspect of Omkara, which is something that we will do today and close. 8. Akara, Ukara, Makara, Nada, Bindu, Kala, Shanta, and Atishanta. 8 components. What does that denote? 8 aspects. I won't even say the Paramatma's 8 different ways of contemplation. Vishwa, Tejasa, Pragna, Turya, Atma, Antaratma, Paramatma, Paranjoti, Jnanatma, Vasudeva. Shrishti, Sthiti, Samhara, Niyamana, Jnana, Ajnana, Bandha, Moksha. The controller of 8-fold dispensation of the universe, not 3, 8. Utpatti sthiti samhara niyatir jnanam avrutihi bandha moksha cha purushat yasmat sa harire karat, declares Skanda Purana. Okay, it is not just 3, as some folks think. Okay, and of course, this is what is Janmadhyasya Yataha all about. When Sutrakara has said, this is the definition of Brahman, guys. What is it? Janmadhyasya Yataha. Creation, etc. Creation and others. What is that creation and others? Folks say it is only 3, but it is 8. Okay? And that 8 is denoted by the 8 components of Omkara. So I hope you find this interesting, because now I want to pull you back to the gravity of this verse. Pranavo danuhu sharohi atma brahmata laksham uchyate apramattena vedavyam sharavat tanmayo bhaved. Sheilaji, Manjunathi?
Madhu, I wanted to ask something about this Oyate Dhatuhu, Otaha Vachi, in whom all gunas are present. You said transempirical gunas, but will the jiva, what does the jiva touch in Parokshanubhuti and come? You said it touches and it stays with that. I mean, doesn't get stuck to that, but...
Yeah, and that depends on the Jiva Swabhava, Shilaji. So you and me, for example, and the Shastra say for you and me, if we reach the Aparoksha stage, it will be like a lightning. It may be just a flash. But there are the Tattvabhimani Devatas who are Aparoksha Jnanis always. And then there are the highest of the categories like Chaturmukha Brahma and Rujus like Vayu Tattva, Prana Tattva and so on. And then of course you have the Lakshmi. So these guys will have a clarity. So let me just hang on, bear with me.
But I can, even if you go, I'll lock the car park. That's not.
Let me mute Sudarshan.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. So Sudarshan, you want to mute, please? Yeah, okay. So wait. So we said the Aparoksha Jnana are of different depths and clarity. Okay, so that is the first one. So for you and me, let's say we do achieve Aparoksha Jnana. So what we might touch is, I don't know. You have to know yourself. That is your experience. That is your unique experience. Upanishad will only give you a direction and say, look, this is the direction, guys. You have to do this. But then that Aparoksha Jnana state of experience of what is it that you know about Brahman, that is your Bimba Rupa Shakshatkara, as it said. What is that Bimba Rupa or Paramatma that you are going to see is unique to you based on your capacity. That Bimba Rupa Paramatma is always the same in everybody. Okay, but as per your capacity, you can only touch him and understand him like that Meru mountain that you touch. So that is the beautiful analogy of Garuda Purana. So you will know him. You may know him as Satchitananda Atma. So tam yata upasate tataiva bhavati, right? If you
It is
upasana,
Antaryami, and we can see Antaryami in the bhava we see. I mean, we perceive him as, isn't it?
so you might be able to touch him and understand him as, oh, this guy is Satchitananda Atma. You may have that real experience of this. Currently, it is all theoretical. You may have a real experience based on your sadhana. So I hope that
based on Guru's grace, God's grace.
Of course, Guru's grace, and without Guru's grace, no, we can't go anywhere.
It will be Shanta, Ati Shanta level. I felt, because you said told the 8 dispensations now.
Yeah, so that is the 8 dispensations of how Omkara is uttered, right? It comes from your navel and it goes all the way up, and then you say this. So that 8 levels in which sound is created denotes that 8 aspects of Paramatma and so on. And then as you contemplate like that, then at one point your mind may still and your Jiva Swabhava will look down and look at this Antaryamin. The Antaryamin then will remove all the karmic imprints in your Linga Sharira. That is the process that has been described. So these 2 verses, let's close this today. We got 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shilaji. So we are doing good in this session, finishing on time. Danur Gruhitva Upanishadam Mahastram Sharamhi Upasa Nishitam Sandadita Ayamya Tadbhavagatena Chetasa Laksham Tadeva Aksharam Somya Viddi Pranavo Danuhu Sharohi Atma Brahmatal Lakshamuchyate Apramattena Vedavyam Sharavat Tanmayo Bhaved. Memorize these verses, because I think this is something that we have to do every day to progress, because this is a tough journey. It is not an easy journey. Is the language of the Upanishads always, as we said in Katha Upanishad, right? And also in the Mundaka Upanishad, our Vedic rishis are saying this is a tough journey. Be very careful, be focused, be what you're doing. Yeah, it is a battle. And the beauty of this battle is very different from the battlefield that you go outside. They are different. Okay, what is this battle that you are having? You are trying to focus and hit your arrow, which is the mind or the Jiva Swabhava, on your target with bhava, tadbhava gatena chetasa. With devotion you are hitting it. With love we are hitting this target. Whereas in the war that is happening all around us in this world, this guy is full of hate and he is hitting this target with anger. There is a huge difference between these 2 things, but both of them are called Adhvara. Our gurus teachers, they both call Adhvara. Adhvara is a name for war. Adhvara is also a name for Deva Puja. Dhyana Yuddha is also called Adhvara. But there are striking differences which makes it very beautiful to summarize before we close today's session. In this Yuddha, there is this guy and this guy, they are 2 enemies. Whereas in Dhyana Yuddha, they are not enemies. This guy with all his love hits this target, who receives this target with this arrow with all the love that can be. Okay? So they are not at all enemies. This one has hatred and anger, but here there is love and devotion in this Dhyana Yuddha. Here, one guy may win. Okay, so this fellow may win in this battle. Whereas in Dhyana Viddha, our rishis tell us both are winners. Okay, so this fellow who is hitting the target and hits this Brahman with his arrow thinks that he is a winner. And that Antaryamin, Avihi Sannihitam Guhacharam Nama. And he is sitting there and waiting. When is this fellow going to hit me? When is he going to hit me as a target? I am waiting for him to hit me with the arrow. Okay. And once this guy hits him, he was also very happy and he says, I have now won this battle with this Jiva. I have also won this battle. The Jiva has also won this battle. So that is the view. Both are winners here. And in a sense, one person in this Yuddha can lose. Whereas here, both of them lose. In the sense they surrender to each other. That is the ultimate synchrony, isn't it? Where the Jiva surrenders to Paramatma. And we know from so many beautiful stories of Bhagavatam that this Paramatma serves the Jivas. And he also surrenders to them. So here, both of them surrender to each other. Both lose. Both win. That is the difference from this Yuddha where one wins and the other loses. Okay. So this is a very, very beautiful context of Mundaka Upanishad that opens up lots of contemplations. And again, our gurus teach us, why did Arjuna was taught Gita in the battlefield? Yuddha, Dhyana Yuddha. Think about that. Okay. Why do gopis argue with Krishna? They are always having arguments and fight with Krishna. Why? He's stealing all this butter and these gopis are having a lot of arguments and fight with him. Why? Look at it that from that perspective, that this is Dhyana Yuddha, yeah, also called Advara. Yeah, so that Advara word is interesting, which will open up in several different ways. And that battle between the Jiva and the Antaryamin is a beautiful one, is what Angirasa is summarizing in this verse. And as soon as he has done this, he goes to, who is this Antaryamin? Let me remind you who this Antaryamin is. Yasmin Dhyau Prithvi cha Antariksham Votam Manaha Saha Pranaishta Sarvaihi Tam Yeva Ekam Janata Atmanam Anyavacho Vimunchata Amrutasya Esha Setuhu. This is an amazing, very popular verse. Tam eva ekam janata atmanam anyavacho vimunchata amrutasya esha setuhu. And this guy is Yasmin Dhyau Prithvi cha Antariksham Votam. That Shilaji was mentioning about Votam. Uyate iti Om, Votatvachi iti Om. Here that Vota is Uyate iti Om. We will discuss all this in next week, and of course bring in Mattaha Parataram and Votatvachi and all that discussions about who this Antaryamin is. And you need to know this Antaryamin because he is the bridge. He is the bridge for what? That is what we are going to be discussing in next session. Okay, so on that note, we'll close today's session. Krishna Pranamastu. If there are any questions, we can take it up now.
Rihum, this is Narayan. I have a question. You mentioned in the early of the today's pata, right? Aproksha Jnana, right? So when the Aproksha Jnana happens, is it we use the Swarupa Indriya to see the God, not we don't use the Prakrita Indriya?
Yeah, so a very beautiful question, Narayanji. So I think there are a couple of views on that. The first one is Swarupa Indriya itself, looking at the Antaryamin, and the other one is, the other view, there is that Aparoksha Jnana, for example, Dhruva in Bhagavatam, the Aparoksha Jnana, the Dhruva gets that described as Paramatma with this Achintya Adbhuta Shakti can even make the material Indriyas to see him. So that is also another view that is out there. So there are two views, but primarily many subscribe to the first view as where the Jiva Swabhava itself has an opportunity to see the Antaryami.
Okay. I mean, follow up on that is that the Devatas, you said, Jnana Aprokshi, right? So what does that mean? Is it they see the God before even they born, before they got the Prakrita, Dega and everything?
Okay, so there, so all the answer to that, Narayanji, would be, so each Tattva Vidvani Devata, as you know, is a post. So they are not
Right.
individuals with a name. So each the Tattva Bhima, when I say Indra, for example, Indra is a post, and then there is a Jiva with that particular capacity that occupies that post called the Indra. Okay, so that is in this creation or in this Manvantara, for example, they occupy that particular post. So they still have their material bodies, they still have their Swarupa Indriyas, they still have other Indriyas, but these guys are exalted in the sense that they have the Aparoksha Jnana of the Antaryamin, they have done as Bimba Sakshatkara already. So they are exhausting their prarabdha in this Manvantara or in this Brahmakalpa before going to moksha. So in moksha, for example, in the previous Brahmas, there must have been a previous Brahma, right? In the previous creation. In the previous creation, there probably was an Indra who was looking after this Manvantara, who has attained liberation and he has crossed over to the transmaterial plane. So we are talking about, when we say this Arjuna or this Indra or Devendra, we are talking about in this Manvantara, in this Yuga, and so on. So you got to bring that into the equation and understand it. I think I kind of answered your question. I don't know whether I made it.
No, my question is like, Jata Aparokshi in the sense that point of they have only Swarupa Dega and Linga Dega, right? Is it they got the Aparoksha in that form? See, the other body comes after their creation, right? So is the true statement? That's what I want to know.
I think your first point about that they have the Bimbarupa Sakshatkara when they come into creation. Yes, they are Aparoksha Jnanis, right? I think that is how it is, unless anybody else has a different view here. But the thing is, even if you're an Aparoksha Jnanin, you can still have Ajnana. So that is what that eightfold dispensation aspect, when it says Avrittihi, that Avrittihi is applicable only to Aparoksha Jnanis, because it is the Aparoksha Jnanin Indra who has come down as Arjuna. But this Arjuna does not know he is Indra. If he knows he is Indra, he has to go back to the Indra Loka. So those are all the rules, right? So he still has a little bit of Ajnana which Paramatma gives so that this guy can work out his salvation. Yeah, that is how I understand it, unless you want to bring in a new other perspectives or anybody else wants to contribute here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, cool. Any other questions? Right, thank you very much. So, Sureshji, if you are there, could you recite Om and we close today's session, please? Thank you very much, everyone. Have a nice day, and we'll catch up again next week. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you, Mother.
Thank you, Madhuji.